Thank you for joining us for this webinar on connectivity and the weird transformation that we took with Ian Cole and Can Community Health. And I'm really excited to actually share this journey. This has been a 7 years. How long
Yeah,
have we
about
been doing
that
this,
six,
Ian?
7 years, yeah.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years. And I asked Ian if he would be willing to share his story because Ian is one of the most picky, attentive. He pays
Detail
attention to the
orientated.
technology. And so when we first started working together, we had this he reached out to me and we'll share the story more formally. But anyways, I just wanted to introduce Ian Cole with Can Community Health. We've been working together for about 7 years now. Completely transforming Can Community Health uh, infrastructure to just something absolutely amazing and a testimony to what Peplink and maybe like stepping outside the standard Cisco world can do. And Ian, why don't you introduce yourself and Can Community Health?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ian Cole. I am the infrastructure and security manager at Can Community Health. Can Community Health is a special medical provider for populations that are underserviced. We provide medical, dental, and mental health services across the United States. I think we're as far west now as Phoenix, Arizona. We go up to Norfolk, Virginia. We have Texas and Florida and South Carolina.
And you originally reached out to me, like I said, approximately 7 years ago. And I actually this morning I was going through some old photos. Like I started to like just trying to grab some photos, and I have this old photo of like holding a watch guard. But you started working at Can, and then you you reached out to Peplink actually, I guess, first.
Yeah,
Eh,
so what happened was when I started at Can, I had just worked for an ITSP. I had some exposure to Peplink products. We were trying to make unbreakable voice over IP, which is actually what I typed in the search engine and Peplink popped up. And ironically, so we picked one of those. I put it in a couple places and it worked good. So when I got to Can, um, they were trying to figure out with these watch guards. They were like, oh, these go down, or we have ISPs that go down. I said, well, you guys need SD-WAN, and you should use Peplink. And they said, all right, well, go get us one, and let's see, let's get some more information on it. So filled out the form for Peplink, and then you called me, and that
and
was the beginning.
and it was what was so cool about this project is it really challenged my knowledge of the product. I think it's so funny. I always tell my employees don't ever lie to Ian because he'll catch you. I mean, you did your homework. I mean, you knew a lot of the products and the features and what options were available, even when the very beginning when we started doing this project. And it was really neat to talk to somebody from my standpoint, from a sales and engineering standpoint. There's someone that already had this knowledge of the product lines. It's like you go in there, it's, okay, I'm going to play with this Peplink, or I'm going to play with any other technology, and then you like read the manuals and actually look at all the products. And so when you ask questions, it's almost like a lawyer. You kind of already know the answer to. You just want to make sure you're getting confirmation on that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like let me make sure that I interpreted the what it said correctly or how the feature is applied correctly. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when I started off with the phone call, I said, we want to do these in drop-in mode because I didn't know at that time whether or not they wanted to get rid of the watch guards. I was still learning on how they were sized and then what else the Peplink can do, right? So from my standpoint, the Peplink could bond together these connections and provide a very reliable connection based on what you're trying to achieve or what product you're trying to push over that. And so that was the original focus. And I didn't even I knew a little bit about in control, but it was more for just kind of you configure it. It was like you get it in there, you kind of see some things, but it was always going to the web. So I didn't really understand yet the power of the in control. And then I didn't realize they had Wi-Fi, and we had a mosh posh of different things. And so as you learned what products were available, it became more like, can we put this all together as one, you know?
And that initial discovery, so we started off with a balance 380, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
the Tuttle location. And so we started playing around with the balance 380 and the Tuttle location. And we needed to be able to play. Well, first you did your homework. You played with it for probably a month and a half.
Yeah.
And then you said, okay, how do we like, okay, I've got this thing up and running. We got it plugged in. And you had originally talked about drop-in mode. And I was like, well, yeah, have you thought about just full ecosystem replacement as far as the WAN edge is concerned? And we talked about
Mm,
the routing capabilities and OSPF and the ability to seamlessly scale the network. And back then, I wasn't using in control for Speed Fusion either. It was all manual. I actually remember
yeah.
when we switched that. So in control was there, but it wasn't as fine tuned as it is today.
Yeah.
And
What was not the Swiss Army knife it is now. Yeah.
exactly. And so and I remember you going, okay, I need to set this thing up so that we can maybe play around with one other site and and see how this interoption works. And it's one of the
Hmm.
first times I ever put Peplink router not in drop-in mode, but in parallel to another router. So we had your FortiGate, I'm sorry, your WatchGuard, and it
Yep.
had all its tunnels and connections to all the other sites. And then we had this Peplink router right next to it. Um, and it had its own public IP address. And then we set up a routing relationship between the WatchGuard and the Peplink. And this allowed us to basically onboard test sites and test networks without interfering with the existing infrastructure. It was almost like
Hmm.
a non-intrusive pilot. And I just remember when we first set that up, I was like, okay, I know this will work. I know this will work. I know this will work. and,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about it, right? So we did it. We had kind of this live network, and then we're saying, okay, well, it's all IPsec. Well, let's see if we can just put this thing IPsec with this other thing IPsec, and then see if it just kind of keeps on moving. And then after we replace all those, then we can switch it over to the other one. So it was very interesting. It was a lot of little steps like that. Um, and then as we did that, right, as we were able to put the IPsec and then tunnel that, it hit, so we have we have a Peplink IPsec to the WatchGuard, and then as we were kind of like just moving cables down to the new one, to the Peplinks in each location, and then they were just establishing tunnels. So then all of a sudden we just had everything talking IPsec through the Peplinks, and we were like, that was that wasn't hard. Yeah, but
yeah.
there was a lot of planning ahead of that. But once we did that, then we're like, okay, I'm like, okay, what's the next level? You know, let's go up. And I think that's when we decided to do speed fusion
Yep.
on it,
Yeah, and then
right?
we added, so
So,
yeah, we migrated it, and then we upgraded to Speed Fusion and really transitioned
hmm,
the infrastructure over to Speed Fusion, and then you started adding your second internet connections to each of the sites.
that's
Um,
right.
yeah, and so that created, I mean, and we're talking once again 7 years ago, and I I, I don't have a proper. I wish I could B-roll. I wish I had like a production studio where we could B-roll some fun stuff. But I mean, you think about this. Like we got this approval. We did the pilot. We got the approval, and then it was okay. Now we need to onboard 27 sites, and we need to do it with zero downtime and non-intrusive. And
Yep.
we staged all 27 routers. And they were 380s at the time. We staged
Yep.
27 routers, and then we literally loaded them up in the back of my SUV, and we just drove from Virginia all the way down to Miami and up to. I mean, we went down
Yeah.
the East Coast and up the
Wait.
West Coast, and
Yeah. So originally, I think what we did is I went up to Fort Walton Beach. I was doing something up there, and I said, "Hey, can you bring me a router?" So he brought me a router up there, and I said, "Yeah, you want to go to? I got to do some work in Virginia. Want to drive to Virginia?" So we met some of the team up. We got Virginia, South Carolina routers. We drove up there. We did those. We came back. So now we were kind of like that was our furthest out of state stuff we had. So now we were, you know, complete out of state. And so now the question was, all right, our full concentration is in Florida. Well, how do we do all these? And then we're like, well, I don't want it to take months, right? Because I don't like to take months to do things. And then that's when we started trying to plan out, say, how fast can we do this effectively, with minimal downtime, if any.
I think
And
we did
that's
that,
that
right? I mean, we
that's
migrated
exactly what we did. Yeah.
from
So we just said, all right, we're gonna get together this team, right? And we're gonna go in, and I think we were doing APs at the same time. So we said, all right, we're gonna come in, and it was timed. We pre-configured, and that was the beauty. That's when we start to realize the power of the in control, right? Because now I can go into in control and I can set up all of these different things with tags and everything. And I can say, all right, I want these Wi-Fi settings, and then I can just apply these tags. And I don't have to go individually to all those things once they come online and then configure them, right? They get the global configuration pushed down to them. So we were able to create a tag and then create this configuration. And then as we plugged them in and they came up, the configuration just started downloading, everything kind of went, and we were really just testing. We went in there, two guys were pulling out the router, two guys were swapping out APs, and then we tested everything, and then we're out the door to the next one. And I think, just I honestly don't believe that it would have been able to be done as efficiently as we did it without the ecosystem being what it is, because there's no um other way to really do that effectively that I can see for a product that is as feature rich as the Peplink routers are.
And speaking of that, when we started playing around with that, I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but it was just, I mean, it was 7 years ago, and it's really, kind of I'm trying to remember everything. But you were also one of the first adopters of our switches, correct?
Yes, yes. So we were building the headquarters, and we were like, I said, man, I don't want to buy a whole bunch of Netgear switches or any other switch really, because we had a mix originally of Netgears and some other really other stuff that not even name brand, just kind of all together. And they were like, well, at that time they only made switches for certain entities under special contracts, and we were like, well, if we sign some magic papers, can we see some of these and try them out? And they said, okay. So we did that, and we got some of these switches, and then I was like, well, if I can do the same thing with these switches that I'm able to do with these routers, and then I can tie that together with these APs, then let's do it. And I think the big challenge that we had at Fruitville is we had a lot of it was all open space. So we had to deliver fiber to each switch and then locally do copper, and we were able to achieve that with it. We did have some of the first switches. Yeah, we were really new on the firmware. There was very some basic, it just kind of moved packets. It didn't do too many other things, but it definitely did what we needed it to do at the beginning.
Have a photo I'm going to try to share. So can you share the Fruitville? So we started to plan out Fruitville, which was your global headquarters or national
Yep.
headquarters, however that's stated. Can you talk about the adoption of the EPX and why we did
Oh
that and
man.
how?
So okay, so because I have a passion for performance, I there was two things. I didn't want to handicap my uplinks with 1 gig connections, for one. I also wanted redundancy. And then I also did not want to have to take up a switch port to uplink from one switch to the next switch. So I said, well, I want to use the 10 gig ports, but then I don't want to just chain into all of them, because we had a lot of switches, and that would one switch going down would take down the network. So I said, could we fiber to right to the router? Do they have any router or any product that's kind of like a aggregator switch, right? Anything that can do like a link aggregation of all these fiber connections. And then we were going to do HA. So we're like, well, I see you have this EPX and it can do these SFP. Can we just fully load it with SFPs? And you said, I don't know. And then I think we went back and asked Peplink. They're like, we never did that before, but we willing to try it. And so yeah, that was it. That was our HAEPX. So
And
basically, every switch in here in this entire building had a direct connection to each one of these routers. So the master and the slave. So whatever state the routers were in, whichever one was active, everything got was still online. And so it was all
and
directly back. It was acting like a routing aggregation, everything all together.
it was like a core switch. I mean,
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
this single-handedly changed my concept of core infrastructure for a cloud-centric company. You've been data center driven and cloud driven for the most of the time that we've been working together. And
Yeah.
when we started building this out, when we started building this network out, I was like, I mean, when I start, sorry, my brain is just getting so excited. When I started working with Peplink, I learned that we could do things that no one else could do to solve problems and create connectivity where other people couldn't, like transmitting mammography images over 3G networks in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana.
Yep.
And it was like, holy cow, we can solve amazing problems with Peplink.
Hmm.
Then I met Ian Cole, and he started challenging me even more. And this project changed my idea of SDN, self-defined networking, not just SD-WAN, but the idea that you you don't need a complicated core switch anymore with a cloud-centric company. And if you're running data centers and you're running in the cloud, you're able to deploy incredibly reliable, high performing networks at a fraction of the cost, but also at a fraction of the difficulty.
Hmm.
And the way that we built this network out with all the 10 gigabit transceivers going to all the switches for complete redundancy and resiliency. I mean, literally, you could lose an entire switch and only that switch was affected. Nothing else would be affected. Or you could lose a router and the entire infrastructure would seamlessly move over. And there were no stacking. There was no, I mean, it's
Hmm.
just a simple access level network that has enterprise resiliency and scale. And playing with this EPX design really just changed my understanding of really how powerful Peplink was at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think we started off the routers really were just like the balance routers were kind of like what Peplink was doing in their mobile, and they started bringing that more towards the enterprise, right? And then we started to build out more of this stuff. And this is when it really got really exciting because now you're seeing kind of that specialization that they have in the mobile connectivity being brought in to the enterprise space, and they're leveraging a lot of those technologies in there. And then the platform being what the platform is makes it really easy. So we started off, and then our designs evolve, and realistically, as we look at this, right, and we started to ask more questions. So now we're like, okay, so now we have this thing here. And I said, now we're going to have this, these are some of our mobile medical units, but we have a big mobile medical unit that has a dental and a medical space
Isn't
inside
this
of it.
this right here?
Yeah, that's it right there. And I said, can we put a phone in there? And they're like, yeah, we can put a phone in there. So we started to do things like that. And then that's when we really started to say, then I said, I think I asked you at that point, I said, what if I'm building a clinic and my ISP is not ready yet, but I want to be able to run this clinic effectively. Can I build something portable that I can bring around? And then that's when we tried to build a case. And that was one of the first cases. And
That's,
and
I mean, it's
um
the
and
adoption of the Speed Fusion case. but also the natural evolution. Sorry to interrupt there, but the
Hmm.
natural evolution to your next upgrade. After
Yeah.
the 380s, and we started playing with cellular and these mobile clinics, you wanted 0 day connectivity. You said, I want to be able to light up a clinic and then not have to wait for the ISP to come in. And so
Yep.
we at this time the MBX and the SDXs were out. We have the
Yep.
EPX, and we upgraded all of your sites. I believe at the time it was 35 now.
Yeah.
Aren't you at around 35 sites that
Yeah. Yep.
that
In
we
that range.
upgraded
Yeah.
to the SDX router with well, actually it started out as triple 4G, and then we then later upgraded to dual 5G. But we
Yep.
actually had the triple 4G module, flex module in the SDXs, and we're providing 0 day connectivity.
Hmm.
Um,
That's where we're running off
there's
of right
right
now
there.
at this location where I'm
Yeah.
at. So we actually have an SDX here waiting for our connectivity, and that's exactly what we're running off of right now. Is we're running off of the triple LTE flex module.
And so,
And it's been, yeah, it's been great. It's been up for months for us.
and you can see that this is here. And so what's neat is because we're running AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and you have it at day zero here when you set the sites, we can go in as IT, completely onboard a site, get your access control up and running, get your phones up and running, and then just
Hmm.
wait for the fiber to be plugged in.
Yep.
And we don't have to worry about, you know, the scheduling conflicts and trying to get the infrastructure up and running while waiting for the carriers to do their job. And this is a
Yeah.
picture of that. We got the SDX here with the triple 4G, the fiber uplinks into the switches, and you have adopted almost all of Peplink technology. Have you had any kickback, or I mean, I know there's a lot of competitors out there that offer solutions, and over the years, I can you, for someone that might be is looking into this and going, hey, this isn't really enterprise. Uh, you're outside of one other company that we can't mention the name of. I mean, you guys have the most Peplink routers out there. How how does that conversation go internally? Cost savings, features, security, et cetera. How do you feel about that? Now that you've been
Yeah. I
doing this
mean,
for 7 years.
so, in the beginning, that was a lot of the question, right? Like, we are medical, so we have HIPAA compliances, we have annual pen testing that we have to have, and there's a lot of different compliance things that we have to conform with. So we have yet to fail any of them. We've always passed every pen test. We've passed everything, and I think our leadership now, when they look at it, we have some, they look at our renewals and they're like, this is fractions of where some of us have been before, where we have seen some of the renewals that you're like, it's almost like we're doing like our capex every year. It's almost like you're repurchasing the stuff every year because the cost is so much. But the cost has been very predictable. It's and the value for the money is great. And we've had no pushback from any of our leadership team on the cost, and the performance is it speaks for itself. We have stuff that goes down, we just get alerts, but we get zero help desk impact because we have zero clinical impact. People don't even realize when a circuit drops or comes back on stuff. They have no idea. And
And
so that works out very well for us because it keeps our load down, and if we get the alert, we can deal with that. But the goal of all of this is always to provide, seamless working connectivity for everyone. If we can give our people that are dealing with the patients the connectivity so they can provide the service that the patients need, then a lot of the other conversations on how much it costs, they're minimized a little bit. But then when you look at what this platform delivers and what the costs actually are, it's kind of shocking. Yeah, we've had
And
yeah,
what about
oh, but
stability? Like, what about uptime? I was sorry, I was looking for the next picture, but
yeah.
what about stability and uptime? I mean, how much? I mean, do you know like what your uptime is with Peplink?
So
clinic?
we we've only had one router die. And that router died because the electrical um event at that place also took out an Eaton power UPS.
Oh, Phoenix.
So yeah, yeah, literally it
I,
took them out twice. So anyway, we're not in that location and we're in a different location, but that was the only one that died. I mean, we've got over 100 switches, right? For example, and we've had three that we've had to 3 or 4 that we've had to RMA. Um, Realistically, I mean, our uptime for this and our manager can attest to it, it's high nines. I mean, we really don't have I don't have any downtime associated to a router being lost. Even that the router when it went down at that location was actually not in use anymore. So we have no operational impact from downtime to these things. Not, knock on wood, who knows what will happen tomorrow or later on today. But realistically, we haven't really had any uptime any uptime issues. I mean, everything has been very solid for us. And I think it's one of those things you take for granted, right? Because then when something does happen, you're looking at it like, is it off? You can't even believe if it's down. Because generally all our ISPs will go down, but the LTE card kicks in automatically. So like we've really enjoyed the uptime for this.
can you talk about let's talk about the Balance 2500 EC. You've been an adopter of pretty much every high performance router we've ever made. You can see an SDX Pro sitting on top of these two 2500 ECs. Um, what are we looking at here, Ian? Tell the
So
people
this
what this
is
is.
so this is the our routers at our data center. So we're in a co-location data center, and originally we had SDX. We have SDXs at every location, and then we were coming back into an SDX Pro. We didn't want to do full EPXs here. We didn't have the need for all of that to use space, and to have more empty, and the SDX was a good fit at the time. But now our data center needs are increasing. So we decided, we saw the EC come out, the 2500 ECs, and I was like, well, this looks like a great evolution for us. And so that's what you see us doing here is we're actually getting ready to swap these out and put the
Yeah,
EP
so
the
this is
ECs
the
and now we've
upgrade path.
yeah. Yeah, and then we've actually just upgraded again, actually. So yeah, we've gone
Yeah,
to the new 5000. So
and you are always a first for us. And so just this past weekend, we upgraded you to the new B5000s with the
yes,
100 gigabit interfaces. And you had mentioned uh, on Monday morning, you said you had noticed some improvements of your Power BI and a few of
yeah. I mean,
your
we didn't
applications.
even yeah. So we haven't even lit up the 25 and the 100 gig connections yet, right? We're still on the tens here, but our Speed Fusion VPN connectivity is so much faster now. We're talking about when we were at which is our new headquarters in Ybor, right? We have two 1 gig fiber circuits there, DIA circuits, and you'd load the Power BI page and and then it kind of and then it almost like blooms into the page, right? So I've always had an issue with that. And so when I was there, like I told my boss, I'm like, open up the Power BI. And it just went, he goes, holy crap. I'm like, it's so much faster. The speed fusion was and what's so crazy. And one of the things that I enjoy about Peplink so much is that you could have the same circuit and then do an upgrade in firmware, which is included, right, in your package. So when you upgrade the firmware, and all of a sudden, like your speed fusion is like a quarter faster, half as fast. more increase. Everything is always more performant. So anytime you'll do a firmware upgrade and you'll either get a new feature or something that's more performant. And the speed fusion is something that they've always tweaked, and you can tell. Like as soon as you do it, you're like, oh wow, this is faster. Like every time we've gone up, it's faster. Then we go up to this platform on the current firmware, and it's super fast, super fast.
And you and this is lagging down into your I mean you can see kind of in the photo here the Dell VX Rail
Yep.
so you're lagging this down into your software managed
Yeah, those
switches
are those are
for
Dell.
Dell, right?
Yep, those are Dell S series switches there. So we're actually probably looking to upgrade those so we can have 100 gig uplinks. And then everything is going to be 25 gig. So we'll probably do 100 gigs up, do some 25s as backup, something like that. So it's gonna be fun once we finish it, but we got a couple pieces to change out there. Like I said, our data center stuff's important, increasing. Now we have a data warehouse and we have Power BI and all those things, and this really, like I said, this infrastructure now based on all the Peplink stuff makes it so much easier to add and roll out new um, devices and performance. Like now, or they gave us new credit card machines. That's very easy to do. I did that. I work remotely. I do that remotely, push it out, and now they're testing it. And now we're doing kiosks for a kiosk iPad tablet, right, for medical check-ins and that kind of stuff, procedure signings, and we're able to push that out very easily with the with tags and things like that. And it's just very simple to administer, right? Like, it doesn't, it's no magic. So it's no magic in, you say, you don't draw a line, I want to do this to this, and it does all the networking stuff in the back. It's not that magical. But, if you understand your networking, then, and this just makes your job that much easier. It allows you to be more dynamic and more responsive to business needs. Like you just found out today, oh, we're gonna move to this new platform and they're gonna download an app and it has to be on every machine and we need these ports and like all these different things that we all face, right? I like to call it shadow IT when you have like a division or a department says, oh, look, we just got this new thing, and you have to incorporate that, right? And normally that could be kind of hard depending on what your environment is and how far you have to touch things. But this platform is super simple to do that, so it allows you to be more dynamic and more reactive to business needs, and also allows you to enable those business needs a lot faster than you normally would.
I'm going to transition to your mobile fleet, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You guys have started deploying, I mean, almost a nationwide mobile fleet, and you've standardized on the HD4 MBX 5G. There are arguments that go back and forth about little cradle point, single point 5G versus even
Mm.
like a Peplink BR2 or an HD2. You picked the HD4. Why? What brought the? I mean, that's a significantly more expensive router.
So, I mean, realistically, for me, the way I approach these things is, if I'm saving a little bit of money by doing maybe a two module, right, or two modem device, but when I have someone that's out in a remote area, right? Because these things go out and do remote testing, remote telehealth visits, and stuff like that for rural areas. So when I go out there, if I have a weak signal on two, well, I rather have 4 weak signals and put them together and have a kind of decent signal, right? So kind of decent connectivity instead of having some bad connectivity. So I've always gone with the four because we like I said, we also do telehealth visits inside, like actually on the other side of this wall, where the router is mounted, is where we do our telehealth visits. So in there we're talking about we streaming video when we're doing all those kind of things, and then we want to make sure that we have a very fluid, um, easy connectivity. And I just think that you're going to get better options when we have the HD4. And I'm also big on standardization, right? So like if we do almost exclusively 48 port switches, so that everything just it always matches up. Or if we move a location and we say, okay, well, we're gonna close this location, now we're going to this other one. I'm not stuck with, oh, now I have a 24, but I need a 48 here. We just always have 48s, right? The cost per port, as a lot of old Cisco guys will know, like that's not as relevant on the Peplink switches because the overall cost of the switch is not high. So we go to these things because we can easily say, all right, now we traded this in, we have another one, and we just move that HC4 over. We don't have to say, okay, well now we're going to do more things here, and then we just stacking up the equipment that we're not using. So we standardize on it. It gives us more flexibility on it, and not only from reusing it, but really from the connectivity. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If I can get four connections together. If I could add another one right now, like if they came out with a four modem flex card for the SDX, I'd get those, right? Because if I can go faster, it's going to be better. So, I think that the basis anyway, to get back to the question, is really just it's about the performance, right? We do telehealth visits, and video demands a certain amount of bandwidth. So we want to make sure that we can provide that bandwidth, and then people can still do other work, and there's no impact to anyone's workflow.
I like it. It's a hard one, from a sales standpoint. I sell that story, but it's kind of neat to have you explain that story from an end user perspective. I mean, because it's one of those things where it's like when cellular's good, it's great and it solves the problem. It's when it's not good, and then you're sitting there trying to justify, oh well, do we mail another product out there? And so what
Mm-hmm.
you've done with the standardization, even for your Ethernet wiring, which where the way that we go into your sites, the way that you standardize your Ethernet, the way that the switches, the routers. I mean, you can send a technician out, and we know exactly everything's the same,
Yeah.
regardless of the size of the site. It might have more switches, but it's all the same. And it makes it really neat to work on. Um, I know that you are deploying something new today. You want to tell everybody what you're deploying today?
Yeah, so today this is our new Norfolk, Virginia location that we're working on, that we're going to be going live in shortly. And we actually started off here with our SDX that we normally do and our 48 port switches. And now we decided that we're going to go with the new Peplink 48 port switches. So I actually just swapped out the last one this morning. So this site now is fully on the new Peplink switches. And so far everything's been great, you know.
And so now
I
you're
don't
going to get those 2.5 gig uplinks for your APs. And
exactly. So yeah, so generally our wiring contractor, he will put our APs, he always wires APs towards the end of a 48 port patch panel. So that lines up perfectly with the switches 2.5 gigahertz ports. I mean 2.5 gigabit ports. And so I'm excited now because I plugged them all in, and they're all in the 2.5s. And so there's still some catching up to do in the in control UI. It just says auto. It doesn't give you the speed. But when you go into the web page, you can see that it's 2.5. So now I'm just waiting for ISP installs, and then I definitely want to take it for a spin and see, because I mean we've tested these AXs before, and these AXs can easily get 600 and something down. So I'd definitely be interested to see where the ceiling is.
and what would you say to a company, I mean, that's looking to adopt uh, I'm going to say SDN. I know it's sort of a
Mhm.
not really a standard, but looking to adopt the ecosystem, and maybe they're looking at Meraki or Unify or even even Palo. I mean, from a healthcare perspective, security
Hmm.
perspective, and pricing, what would you say when you're looking at Peplink? Like, I mean, you've adopted this ecosystem and really signed off on it, which has led the way for a lot of other enterprises to do that. What can you say to someone that's looking into this product line?
I think you really got to give it you really got to give it a good look because when you look at things like Meraki's and stuff and I'm not gonna sit here and say this is better or not better than another product because everyone's the value on different features is different for everyone, right? So what's relevant for you, what's more important for you. I would say that make sure if you have your get your requirements together and look at this product because I it can fit almost every requirement. There are some specific high security places that would probably benefit from some very specific Cisco security things, mechanisms they've had because of the evolution of their ecosystem over time. But as far as your connectivity and all the way from the Wi-Fi, from the wireless, right, from the access layer and your Wi-Fi, all the way through your switches and your routers. This platform is definitely worth a look. It's easy to deploy, it's performant, and it's very the beauty of it is the team behind it, right? So like we had a product and we have a problem uplinking something or lagging something. Well, how come I can lag these two things on this product, but I can't on this one? And next thing you know, you have a special firmware in a few days and you test it, you put it in, now you can do it. So the response you get from the company, um, and then you start to look at the cost of it. I have not found something that allows me to be as dynamic and responsive to business needs for this price. I think that the ecosystem, and I don't just adopt any of them. I don't even adopt. I wasn't even a fan of the switches when I first came out because I wasn't sure, right? Because the other ones had certain features where I was like, I kind of like how this is done and how that's done. But then so I got a couple and I started messing with them and they're really good. So I think that you should really try and take a look at them, and it's definitely going to change your mind on you don't really need other things. I mean, I think it's definitely got the Meraki's and the Ubiquity stuff easily handled.
And our next trip is rolling out 100 plus 48 port switches, right? We're
That
gonna
is correct.
Yeah, so
That
we're
is
gonna
correct.
be
Yeah.
upgrading all the switches and taking all the APs to 2.5 gigs and increasing that
Hmm.
connectivity. So I'm pretty excited about that road trip. Ian,
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Ian about his deployments and or I know we had a late start and we lost a few people, but does anybody have any questions related to the deployment or Peplink ecosystem or anything related to that environment? Mario has a question. You want to text it to me, Mario, in the Q&A? I might be able to just allow you to talk. I don't know. I can allow you to talk if you want. Here, go ahead and ask your question. I just allowed you to talk.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mario.
Hey, I appreciate it. No, I'm very interested in this setup. So, uh, thank you guys for putting it on. I've got some needs that I think we could benefit from. So,
Well,
Yeah, I
thank
mean
you.
this thing this system, you know, whether it's portable, remote, mounted inside a vehicle, in a structure. I mean, there's a Peplink solution for all of those connectivity scenarios.
And what I like about it in that scenario is the ecosystem is the same, whether it's a mobile cellular router or a
Mhm.
data center router, like we get the
Mhm.
same connectivity regardless. And I really like that. I like that the settings, the UI, the ability, it's just what type of WAN do you have, whether it's Starlink or Ethernet, and we're able to adopt those connections, but the UI is the same.
Exactly. Yep.
Gotcha.
JS,
Oh,
Jay asked a question. Oh, go ahead. Who are you about to talk? Oh, Jay asked a question. He said, "Have you added Starlink or tested with Starlink?" We have done a lot of projects with Starlink.
Yes.
So
Some amazing things with Starlink.
and so we're using Starlink on maritime applications for real time high bandwidth broadband like replacement, and then we're using Starlink for resiliency and backup connections, and so the ability to adapt and have a low latency broadband connection that is resilient from critical infrastructure failures has become an absolute game changer for what we like to call unbreakable connectivity. It adds that
Mm.
extra level of reliability to the network.
Yeah, I think there's native support now, right?
Yeah,
For Starlink, a lot of very specific Starlink features now in the firmware. We've used Starlink at the Tech Summit, right? Ran the Tech Summit off of Starlink. There has been Starlink in some things that people might have, some events people might have watched. So there's a lot of Peplink and Starlink going
I think
around,
you. I
whether you know it or not.
think I like the way you say that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but
absolutely.
thank you
Starlink,
yeah,
yes.
thank you everybody so much. Hold on a second. Have you bonded Starlink with cellular on SpeedFusion? So Starlink bonding with cellular, Emmanuel, Starlink bonding with cellular, you have to take into two aspects before you do this. First is Starlink and cellular are both access level networks, meaning they're not best effort and or dedicated speeds. And so any real-time throughput is going to have variances in actual capabilities. Secondly, um, packet loss and latency affect bonding performance massively. And so when we look at bonding Starlink with 5G or even Starlink with Starlink, what I like to tell people is 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. It equals a really good 1. So when you're bonding two
Yeah.
packet loss or high latency connections, the first one you bond, which is actually why we go with this HD4 here too, the first one you add increases the stability of the internet. It's not like a linear equation. Hey, I get 150 on Starlink. Oh, now I should get 300. It's like I got 150. Now maybe I get a really stable 150, or maybe go to 160. But you're not going to get 300 on that second internet
Yeah.
connection. What you're doing is you're stabilizing the connection. Then when you start adding the third and the fourth and the fifth and the 10th and the 20th, like we're doing for some of our big customers, we're pushing 3.6 gigabits of throughput by bonding Starlinks together. Um, and so you can definitely get that aggregate throughput. You just have to understand it's not linear. And that's where the false expectation comes when you talk about access level networks, whether it's cellular or um, or Starlink, is that it's just not a linear aggregation. You're basically trying to make up for the weaknesses or the losses that are happening
Yeah.
dynamically as you transmit. And a VPN is more sensitive to those versus web traffic or a speed test that's just a TCP connection. And so the answer is yes, as long as you understand the expectations, especially for your clients.